My name's Rios, 34 years old. I was a combat engineer for over a decade before I took a contractor role with a defense firm specializing in hydro-infrastructure logistics. Fancy way of saying we built dams for the military. In the summer of 2017, we were doing a joint exercise with the Washington National Guard called Operation Iron Timber. The goal was to assess potential dam sites in the Colville National Forest under realistic field conditions. For me, it was supposed to be cake. Map some terrain, take some core samples, log GPS data, no patrols, no IED sweeps, no Taliban, just trees and water and peace. I thought I'd be home in 6 days. I left on day 3. Didn't pack, didn't check out with command. I walked into Onion Creek with a half-shattered mind, a 6-inch gash on my forearm, and no idea how the hell I got back down the ridge alive. We were a 4-man team. Sergeant Creel, my old squad leader, Specialist Dorsey, eager and green, E2 Jennings, quiet as a grave, and me. We set up base camp along a dried riverbed that ran parallel to a logging trail. The first night went smooth. Mild temps, clean air, little fire, just us bullshitting while Creel went on about a mountain lion that supposedly stalked this area. I figured it was just another campfire story. Next morning, while we were checking elevations along the north slope, Creel stopped walking mid-sentence and said, "You guys smell that?" I didn't. Not yet. But Dorsey gagged like he caught a whiff of roadkill. By noon, the stench was everywhere. Sour, putrid, wet. We chalked it up to a decomposing animal nearby until we found the first fox. It was hanging by its hind legs from a pine tree. Wire wrapped around its torso. Eyes gone. Mouth stitched shut with fishing line. Creel tapped it with the butt of his rifle. "Someone's been busy." Dorsey tried to laugh, but it died in his throat. Jennings just stared. 10 minutes later, we found a raccoon. Same deal. Then a skinned bobcat. Then a deer carcass suspended between 2 trees like a puppet. By sundown, we'd counted 11 animals, all mutilated, all hung above head height. No footprints, no human waste, no gear. It was like they were offering these things to the sky. I told Creel we should report it. He told me to stick to the mission. That night, Jennings sat up with the NVGs. He didn't speak. He didn't sleep. I caught him whispering something to himself. Numbers, I think, over and over. At 03:16 I woke to piss and found Dorsey standing just outside the firelight, staring at the trees. "You hear it?" he asked. "Hear what?" I said. "Talking, like radio chatter, but closer." His voice was dead flat. I followed his gaze. There was nothing but trees, dense and black. But the silence wasn't natural, no bugs, no wind, no rustling leaves, just that thick, rotting smell. The next morning, Jennings was gone. Boots, pack, rifle, all left behind, like he stood up and walked into the woods barefoot. We searched the grid, called in to base, no signal. Our SAT phone lit up, then died. Something had drained the battery overnight. By 1100, we were considering a full evac. That's when we found the man in the tree, UCP uniform like the old, digital camo. No name tape, no unit patch. His face had been removed, peeled off in strips hanging beside him like ribbons. Dorsey lost it, puked. Creel ordered us back to camp. That's when I noticed the symbols carved into the trees. Not letters, not numbers, spirals. Nested, repeating spirals burned deep into the bark. One of them was still smoking. I touched it. My fingers came back wet like the tree was bleeding. That night, Creel vanished. 1 minute he was beside the fire. Next, just his rifle left behind, barrel snapped like it had been bitten. Dorsey was crying now, full-on panic. "We need to leave, Rios, we need to go now." I agreed. We packed what we could and ran south. We didn't make it half a mile before we saw the lights. Blue, soft, floating in the trees, not flashlights, not drones. They moved like insects, swarming, following. Dorsey screamed and broke off left. I didn't see what got him, but I heard the tearing. I kept running. I didn't stop. Not when I tripped. Not when I gashed my arm on a branch. Not when I heard my name in Creel's voice, calling from every direction at once. I ran until I saw asphalt, Onion Creek, civilization, safety. The sheriff didn't believe me until I mentioned the man in UCP. Then he got real quiet, asked if I'd seen the circles. When I said yes, he just nodded, said, "It's not the first time." The guard sent a transport that night. Told me Jennings had been found, said he was recovering. Said Creel and Dorsey were back in contact, but they wouldn't let me see them, wouldn't let me ask questions. A week later, I was discharged from contract. NDA signed under threat of felony. They called it a psychiatric episode. 2 months ago, I got a package. No return address. Inside was a cassette tape. I had to dig up a recorder just to play it. It was Jennings's voice, whispering coordinates, then a scream, then silence. I took it to the VA. They said there was no specialist Jennings in any registry, not from my unit, not from any unit. I checked social media. Nothing. No photos, no history. It's like he never existed. But I know what I saw. I know what's still out there. Something ancient, ritualistic. It uses the forest like a mouth. And once you step inside the circle, it knows your name. And sometimes, when I wake up sweating, I check my window. Not for people, not for animals, but for the lights. The soft blue ones, floating, waiting, like they remember me. Like they're patient. And every time I do, I wonder if I actually made it out of those woods, or if I'm just dreaming on a branch somewhere, meat swinging in the wind. We were 2 months into a border rotation near the Wazir Range, a place so remote the maps didn't name half the terrain. Firebase Kepler was our home, a frozen set of prefab huts, one rusting comms tower, and a morale level that sat somewhere between bored and paranoid. There was no real action out there, just long days of silence and freezing nights, and that made your thoughts wander in dangerous ways. I usually killed time by hiking out to an old OP, observation point, on a ridge west of the wire. Found it back in the fall when we were doing a terrain sweep. It had this half-collapsed perimeter ring from the Soviets, probably Cold War era, and you could sit there and see a good quarter click into the forest below. Quiet, peaceful, and, more importantly, away from command's eyes. It was early March when this happened. Cold was still holding on in the mornings, ground frosted stiff, but the days were warming up. I had a half-day off rotation, so around 1600 I signed out with Sergeant Wilkes and headed out solo toward the ridge. Just wanted to smoke, clear my head, maybe catch the sunset. That spot always gave me a weird kind of peace. The walk took about 40 minutes, terrain still half frozen, boots crunching in the dirty ice. I reached the OP as the sun was starting to drop behind the hills, painted the trees in that dull orange glow. I lit up and sat back on a rock, just breathing in the stillness. And then I saw the fire. At first I thought it was a reflection, but no, it was a real fire burning strong about 200 meters down in the trees. Not part of our AO, no patrols out, definitely not one of ours. There was no tent, no gear, no sign of movement, just flames rising between the trunks like someone had just built it and left. I radioed back to Kepler to report an unknown heat signature. Static. Tried again. Nothing but dead air. The thing was that fire wasn't dying. It was growing, flames rising like someone had fed it full logs, not just twigs. Bonfire level. That didn't sit right. Fires like that weren't allowed out here. If this was a local, they were risking a lot. I stared at it for a solid half hour. No movement. No one stoking it. No shadows dancing around it like you'd expect. Finally, I made the call. I needed to check it out. Could have been a lost hiker or a trap. Either way, it was too close to our position to ignore. I grabbed my rifle, shouldered up, and started hiking down into the trees. The fire's light flickered through the branches like it was breathing. No other way to describe it. There was no noise, no rustling. Just that steady crackle of fire. When I got closer, I felt it. That heat. Too strong for how far I still was. And it smelled wrong, not like wood, not like anything I'd burned before. The fire was blazing high when I stepped into the clearing. Someone had built it deliberately. Full logs laid under a nest of kindling, not haphazard, but structured, like a signal. And there was no one there. I circled the area, rifle up, flashlight cutting through the dark. No footprints, no discarded. Gear, nothing. Just that fire roaring in the middle of nowhere like it had been waiting. I called out. "Anyone out here? You need assistance?" Nothing. I waited. Still nothing. That's when I noticed the ground around it. No melted snow, no scorched grass, like the fire had no effect on anything except air. I knelt and started tossing dirt and half-frozen soil onto the logs. Took me a few minutes, but eventually the flame sputtered out. Smoke curled into the trees, thick and bitter. Then silence. Not just quiet, dead silence, like the whole forest had been holding its breath. I stood there in the dark, scanning. That's when I felt eyes on me. I turned and saw nothing. Flashlight beams swept empty trees, but I wasn't alone anymore. I knew it. I started hiking back. Up, fast, rifle ready. The slope back to the OP seemed longer than it had coming down. When I finally broke through the tree line and reached my pack, I saw him. A figure standing just off the trail, maybe 50 meters away. No flashlight, no gear. Just a man-shaped shadow watching. I froze. "Hey!" I called out. "You light that fire?" He didn't move, just stared. "You on patrol?" I asked again, louder. No answer. I flicked my beam toward him, and it barely reached. It was like the light avoided him. I started packing, fast, kept one eye on him the whole time. He never moved, just stood there. As I slung my pack on, I said, "You need to move on. This area's under military control." Still nothing. That's when the fear kicked in. Not the usual jumpy kind either. The deep, primal kind that tells, "You're not supposed to be somewhere." I started walking. Steady, didn't run, but every step felt heavier. When I glanced back, he was still there, watching. I didn't look again, made it back to base by 22:30, reported it up the chain. They sent a recon drone over the grid the next morning. No heat signatures, no fire residue, just frost-covered ground. Like nothing had happened. Command chalked it up to a local cooking fire or maybe stress hallucination. Told me to get more sleep. I've been out on patrols since, hit firefights, watched men bleed. But nothing has stayed with me like that fire, like that figure, whatever, was out there. It wasn't just some dumb hiker or insurgent. It wanted to be seen, or maybe it wanted me to see something. I never went back to that OP, and I never will. My name's Staff Sergeant Devin Holt. I was 31 the winter our platoon got sent to the Ridgeline Border Operating Post, right along the edge of the Afghan-Pakistani frontier. It wasn't a regular deployment. Command kept calling it cooperative. Overwatch, but the locals had another name for it. Ghost Hill. We didn't hear that until later, of course. It started with a call over secure comms from the battalion. We were ordered to meet a joint task force briefing at Fob Ironhook, 15 clicks west of our outpost. The message was blunt. 0900. Intel confirms high-value hostility in the AO. ROB updated. Now, when a squad like ours, 3rd Platoon, Bravo Company, gets pulled into a task force op, it's either counterinsurgency or a rogue element sweep. I'd been in country long enough to know that high-value hostile usually meant some Taliban leader or foreign fighter. But this one was different. The briefing was led by a major from JSOC, flanked by a DIA field agent and a couple of stone-faced Afghan NDS officers. The host's name was Rashid Red Hand Jira, 42 years old, former Mujj turned freelance killer. Wanted for the murder of 2 CIA operatives in Nangarhar and 4 ANA officers outside Jalalabad. The DIA rep said he might be an ex-Russian. Spetsnaz based on his tactics, but the weird part, no photos, no thermal scans. Just a topographic map of the Ridgeback Peaks, a snowy stretch of mountains near the border. Jira had been spotted by a local shepherd 3 days prior, said he was living in one of the ridge caves alone. "Kill or capture," the major said. "Your call, Sergeant. But if he runs, don't follow. Clear?" It wasn't. The plan was simple. We'd hike in under darkness, approach the caves at dawn. My fire team would push toward the summit. Another would cut off the eastern pass. The rest held the trailhead. It was a tough climb, rock, frost, and dead silence. Halfway up, Specialist Dorsey stopped cold and pointed. "Dead bird," he said. And not just one. A whole string of them, finches, maybe crows, littered the snow. Frozen stiff. No blood, no scavenger marks, just dead. Then we found a marmot, then a fox. Same deal. I radioed Captain Rames, who was coordinating from the base of the slope. "We've got mass wildlife die-off up here. Dozens. Looks recent." He came back with a grunt. That's a negative on diverting. Stay on objective. Jira's priority. Out. I wanted to argue, but we were already close to the caves. Ridgeback's peak was dusted white, the wind cutting sideways. We pushed forward, the entrance yawning before us, a gash in the rock barely 6 feet high. Inside it was cold, damp, smelled faintly of copper and sour milk. We moved in a two-stack, weapons raised, lights cutting through the dark. Jira was there, just like the shepherd said, sitting against the back wall, back turned, rocking side to side. He looked small, malnourished, but somehow alert. "Red hand!" I barked. "Hands where I can see them." He didn't move, just rocked like he couldn't even hear us. PFC Morales edged forward, lowered his rifle just enough to touch the guy's shoulder. "Sir, I think he's—" Jira snapped. "I mean literally." His whole body jerked like someone plugged him into a live generator. Morales recoiled and dropped to the ground, convulsing hard, froth bubbling at the corner of his mouth. "Contact! Medic!" I shouted, dragging Morales back, while another soldier covered Jira. That's when the man turned around. He smiled. It wasn't rage or madness, just satisfaction, like he'd been waiting for this. We zip-tied him, fast, double-wrapped, and dragged him outside. Morales was still twitching when the medevac arrived. They had to put him under to stop the seizures. We searched the cave, found nothing, no food, no gear, no bedding, just scrawled marks in the wire dirt, circles and slashes, strange symbols none of us recognized. Our intel guys took photos, but said it was probably tribal gibberish. Jira never spoke. Not on the flight, not in holding, just rocked. Morales? He came out of the coma a week later with no memory of anything past breakfast that morning. They called it acute stress-induced epilepsy, said it was 1 in a million, and they reassigned him stateside. As for the wildlife, we filed it in the after-action report. Dead animals noted, no signs of trauma. No one tested them, no autopsies. Too remote, too inconvenient. Command called it environmental stress. Birds drop from the sky sometimes, they said. Happens. But I remember the smell. I remember how Jira's body stayed warm in that cave, even with frost on his boots. And I remember Morales hitting the ground like someone cut his strings. It should have ended there. But it didn't. 2 weeks later, back at base, I woke up to see Dorsey standing at the edge of my bunk, breathing hard. His hands were shaking.
"I saw him," he whispered. "Jira, outside the wire, just standing." I told him it was a nightmare. Stress. Maybe a villager with similar features. He didn't believe me. Said the man's eyes glowed. No NVGs, no reflection, just
glow. I dismissed it, but that night I heard the dogs barking out toward the ridge. Then silence. Total blackout. No backup generators kicked on. Our comms went dead for 5 minutes flat. When power came back, 2 perimeter cameras were fried. Circuit. Boards melted, like someone microwaved the insides. A tech spec came out from Ironhook, pulled the drives, and said it was a lightning surge in December, with 0 clouds. Dorsey started drawing the same symbols we'd seen in the cave on napkins, MRE boxes, the walls of the latrine. One day, He walked into the motor pool, picked up a monkey wrench, and shattered his own hand, bone by bone, screaming, "It's how he got out!" We medevaced him too. Psych eval said he was dissociating, but before they took him, I asked
him what he meant. Dorsey looked at me with bloodshot eyes and said, "You didn't kill him. You unplugged him."
The last straw came when our interpreter, Fahim, a good guy, worked with us for months, refused to set foot near the cave site again. Said something about an Ajdaha, a myth from his village. Not a man. Not even a jinn. Something older. Said the ridge was a prison. A high cage where the mountain spirits chained it down. And we had broken the gate. I pulled strings, got our team rotated out 6 weeks early. JSOC didn't push back. I think they knew. Hell, they definitely knew. Morales never came back. Dorsey's in a VA psych ward in Texas. I still get night sweats. And as for Jira, last I heard, they moved him to a black site in Turkey, but no records, no transfers, not even a name on the manifest, just a holding number, Echo 6. You ever see a man break reality with a touch? I have, whatever we brought. Down from Ridgeback, it wasn't just a man, it was a beacon, a key, and I don't think we locked the door behind us. You ever hear about Red Route Echo? We were in northern Kandahar 2012. I was with a route clearance platoon, 2nd Engineers. Most of our missions were the usual: escort a convoy, sweep for IEDs, piss off some farmers by accidentally driving through their fields. Boring work that could kill you. I didn't mind it. You get numb to the tension after a while. I was 34 back then, senior enough to know better, still dumb enough to keep volunteering. We'd just lost one of our Huskies to a pressure plate 2 weeks earlier. Driver made it out, barely. We were all twitchy after that. Command told us the area had gone cold, but we knew better. You never say cold about a route unless you're trying to get someone hurt. We were told to do a solo recon of a supposed alternate MSR, some grey line barely marked on the sat map, supposed to save convoys time, cut across open desert, reconnect with the main supply route past a village called Baraki Dalana. Nobody'd used it in years. They said it was probably fine. So they sent us. Just 3 of us in one MRAP. Me, Peevett Simmons, and a new LT named Keating. Keating was too fresh to be scared. Simmons was always chewing sunflower seeds like nothing fazed him. And me, I just wanted to get it over with. We left Fob Sweeney at 600. Radio check, route brief, the whole deal. First half was uneventful. Flat nothing, occasional goat herder, sun baking everything into the same dull colour. About 40 clicks in, our sync GARs started acting up. Static, then silence. LT tried cycling power. Nothing. Probably a relay issue, he muttered. Probably, I said. Didn't believe it. That road, we called it a road, but it was more like the ghost of one. Cracked asphalt half buried in dust, leaning signs with bullet holes, no structures, no wires, just flatness and quiet. The kind of quiet that makes you feel like you're being watched just for daring to breathe. About an hour in, the truck died. No bang, no warning, just a hard clunk and then silence. Everything went dark. No engine, no comms, no lights. We sat there for a second. Nobody spoke. Then Simmons said, "You smell that?" I did. Burnt ozone. like fried electronics and blood. LT popped the hatch and we dismounted. I did a walk around. No signs of IEDs, no damage to the axle, nothing leaking. I opened the hood and stared at the engine. I'm not a mechanic, but even I could tell something was wrong. The wires looked melted, not burned, just warped like they'd been under pressure from the inside. We're deadlined, I said. We'll have to set up a perimeter and wait for QRF. LT nodded and climbed back in to try the radio again. Still nothing. We set up a 180, pulled security. Sun started dipping low. The silence got worse. It wasn't just the absence of noise, it felt like the landscape was holding its breath. I caught Simmons looking at the horizon too long. "You good?" I asked. He didn't answer right away.
Thought I saw something move out there, just for a second. We switched watches at 2200. I was on second. Around midnight I heard footsteps, not ours. Heavy, deliberate, like boots on gravel, even though there wasn't any gravel. I froze.
Flicked my NVGs on, nothing. Scanned full circle, still nothing. Simmons was asleep against a wheel well. LT was inside, reading an old Marine Corps field manual like it was going to save us. Then came the scratching. It started on the roof. Slow. Measured. Like nails dragging across armor plating. I aimed my rifle straight up, trying not to breathe. Then came the tapping. 2 slow taps on the glass of the driver's side. I aimed, finger on the trigger, and called out, "Identify yourself." No response. Then I heard it, just like a whisper in the headset, though I wasn't wearing one.
Cold in there. I didn't wait. I screamed for Simmons, grabbed the LT by the vest, and we sprinted into the dark. No plan. Just raw instinct. Something was wrong. More wrong than anything I'd ever felt before. We didn't stop for miles. Ran until our legs gave out. When we finally collapsed, the truck was gone. No lights, no outline, no dust trail. Just open desert. Empty. We walked till morning, found a dirt road, waved down a local truck. The guy wouldn't speak at first.
Just crossed himself and pointed us toward a paved route. We made it back to base by hitching with an ANA convoy. Command launched a search. They found the tire marks leading off MSR Alpha. Nothing else. No vehicle. No debris. Just dead comms and a patch of scorched earth the size of a manhole cover where the truck should have been. They grounded us for 2 weeks. Psych evals, drug tests, the works. LT quit the army 6 months later. Simmons transferred to Germany and won't return my calls. Me? I stayed in, but I never go near that part of the map again. You can ask around. Everyone knows the story. No one talks about it. They still call it Red Route Echo. But it's not on the maps anymore. I was 34 when it happened. A staff sergeant with 2 deployments behind me and a bum ankle that made sure there wouldn't be a third. After the med board, I got sent to an Army Reserve outpost in the middle of nowhere, Louisiana, Camp Grath. It wasn't much, just a few modular buildings in the woods, a half-abandoned training range, and a motor pool that leaked more oil than it fixed. They sent guys like me out there to babysit the place. I was supposed to be on light duty, doing paperwork, inventory checks, the occasional inspection. Easy stuff. My quarters were an old barracks building at the edge of the compound. No one else used that wing. The other reservists came and went for drill weekends, but I stayed full-time. It was just me and a civilian contractor named Bell who handled the power grid. He lived on the opposite end, barely spoke unless the lights went out. The first week was quiet. I cleaned up the place, drank too much Monster, and watched bad movies on my laptop. Then the whistling started. It was the 5th night. I was just about to sleep when I heard it, soft, slow, coming from outside the building. Not a tune, just a broken pattern, off-key and halting. I sat up and listened. Thought it was maybe Bell working late, but it didn't sound like someone humming to themselves. It sounded deliberate, like someone walking past my window whistling as they went. I opened the door. Nothing but trees and gravel. The whistling faded into the woods. The next night, same thing. Around War 115, same tune, same weird pacing. I stepped outside with my flashlight and did a walk around. No footprints, no tracks, just silence. And that weird feeling in your gut like you're not as alone as you thought. After that it became routine. Every night between 1:15 and 1:20 the whistling started. Always from a different direction. Sometimes near the motor, pool, once from behind the DFAC, and one night from right outside my window. I logged it in my duty report. No one followed up. I finally brought it up to Bell on a Friday when we were both grabbing MREs from storage. I asked him if he'd heard anything weird at night. He didn't even look at me, just said, "You staying in Barracks B?"
Yeah.
He nodded once. Used to get calls about that. Before they shut it down, thought they cleared it out. Cleared what out? He didn't answer. That night I didn't sleep. I locked every door, pushed a wall locker in front of the entrance, and stayed up with my sidearm in my lap. At exactly 01:17, the whistling started again, but this time it didn't come from outside. It came from the hallway. I sat, frozen, staring at the door. It was still locked, but the whistling kept moving. Closer. Past my door, then back again. I stood up, cracked the door, and peeked out. Nothing. Next day, I asked the supply guy to check for extra locks. He laughed, said I was paranoid. I stopped asking questions after that. I started digging, found old inspection logs in a locked cabinet in HQ. There were reports from years ago, 2009, 2011, 2013, all mentioning disturbances in Barracks B. One even had a line that read, "Whistling reported nightly, source never identified, recommend vacancy." That night, I moved my cot into the comms room. I figured if something was going to mess with me, at least I'd be near a radio. I was half asleep around 01:15 when the feed crackled. Not the emergency channel, just the regular unit frequency. But there was no voice, just whistling. That same broken tune playing over the comms. No one else was on base. I didn't sleep at all after that. 2 nights later, I tried something dumb. I stayed in my original room. I left the hallway. Light on, door cracked. I wanted to see it. At 01:17 sharp, the light went out. Not just flickered, snapped off like someone hit the breaker. The whistling started right outside my door. Then came the creaking floorboards. I raised my pistol, stepped to the door. I said, "This is Staff Sergeant Del Rey. Identify yourself." No response. I opened the door fast and aimed down the hallway. At the far end stood a figure, pale skin, black fatigues, no insignia. He didn't move, just watched me. "Don't."
"Move," I said. My voice cracked. He tilted his head like he was listening for something. Then he took one slow step back, turned, and sprinted. Fast. I chased, but he was gone before I cleared the corner. No sound, no door slamming, just gone. I fired a shot into the trees outside, more out of panic than aim.
Bell came running, asking if I'd lost my mind. I told him what I saw. He didn't doubt me. Next morning, we checked the door locks. Front door was still locked from the inside. No signs of forced entry. Nothing on the cameras except for 5 minutes of static. Starting at 0117, Bell told me, off the record, that the barracks had a history.
A soldier had gone AWOL from that building back in 1998. Never found. They said he walked into the woods during a night op and never came back. Whistling had been reported ever since. Always around spring, always around 0117 hours. I called in.
A request for reassignment the next day. Said I was having recurring symptoms from my old injury. They approved it without question. I was off Camp Grath by the end of the week. I never went back. Never asked what happened to Barracks B after that. But sometimes, when I can't sleep, I think about that hallway light snapping off, and the way he looked at me, like he already knew I was going to leave. My name's Corporal Ray McKenna. I was 24 when our recon team went missing in the Fagarash Mountains. It was late spring 2006, and NATO was running joint training ops through parts of southern Romania. They called it Exercise Cold Spire. Our unit, 2nd Battalion, Royal Irish Regiment, had been flown in as part of a multinational mountain warfare test. The locals called the terrain beautiful. The maps called it remote. Our boots called it hell. The orders were simple: 6-man recon patrol, 4-day route through the Fagarash Ridge, testing mobility, and nav in isolated terrain. No support. No UAVs, strict comms blackout unless we hit a real emergency. They wanted us to go full analog, map, compass, grit. It was supposed to be good training. It wasn't. Day 2, we lost the trail. No panic, we had our bearings. Our TL sergeant, Howells, was ex-SAS and could dead reckon through fog. But the peaks didn't match the topography. Landmarks were missing. Valleys weren't where they should be. Either the maps were out of date, or we were somewhere we weren't meant to be. By day 3, food was running low. One of the lads, Lucas, was starting to get shaky. Nausea, cold sweats. We'd planned village resupply, but the last waypoint had nothing but collapsed ruins and scorched earth. Looked abandoned since Ceausescu. So when we spotted smoke, real chimney smoke, curling from a cluster of buildings up the mountainside, we were relieved. Howells was skeptical. "Not on the grid," he muttered. "Shouldn't be there." But hunger won out. We approached, cautiously, rifles slung, hands visible. The village was still. Not deserted, just quiet. 20, maybe 30 people, all watching us from behind warped shutters and smoke-stained curtains. One older man approached, grinning, jabbering in Romanian. I spoke just enough to ask for food, held out some NATO cash and an MRE pack by way of trade. He nodded. led us to a stone house and brought out hot goat stew, thick bread, sour milk.
It saved us. No exaggeration, but as we ate, I noticed things. The villagers didn't look right. Not sick, just off. Same wide-set eyes, sallow skin, like they were all cousins. The women stared blankly, heads bowed. The children didn't smile. And no one else spoke. Just the old man. Lucas nudged me.
That stew taste. Weird to you? I told him to shut up and eat. After we were fed, we asked for directions to the mountain pass. The old man just smiled and shook his head. Maine, he said. Tomorrow. When Howells pressed him, tried, pointing to the map, gesturing, he just kept saying the same thing. None of us wanted to stay the night. The vibes were all wrong. One of the Romanians, some young guy with dirty overalls, kept staring at Mallory, the only woman on our patrol. Didn't blink once. We thanked them, handed over a wad of local cash and some spare batteries, then left, hiked about a click, into the woods and set up camp. That night, around 0200, I heard voices. Howells was already awake, crouched with his NVGs. I followed his gaze. 5 figures stood up on the ridge above us. Flashlights beaming down, not moving, not speaking. Howells called out, calm but firm. "We're NATO soldiers. Training exercise. No threat. Identify yourselves." Nothing. Then the lights went out. Complete darkness. No footfall. No rustle. They just vanished. The lads were tense after that. Sleep didn't come easy. In the morning, we packed fast and hit the slope. The pass took 6 hours of brutal climbing. We didn't stop. When we reached the top, we looked back. Nothing. No signs of a village. No chimney smoke. Down the other side, we finally found a comms window and called in extraction. A Romanian ranger met us at the trailhead. When we mentioned the village, he squinted. "Where?" Howells pointed it out on the map. He just shook his head. "No."
People there, all villages in that area, gone since 1987, relocated.
We laughed, thought he was messing with us. "Mate, we ate with them. They took our cash." The ranger didn't smile. He just muttered something under his breath. Later, I asked one of the interpreters about it. He told me what the ranger had said. The mountain keeps what it wants. Back at base, Howells filed the report. It got flagged and kicked upstairs. Then nothing. No follow-up. 2 weeks later, Lucas started coughing blood. Docs couldn't pin it down, organs shutting down one by one. He died in the med bay. Cause of death, unknown pathogen. The stew he'd eaten more of than anyone else. I've done 4 tours. Since then, seen IEDs, snipers, chemical burns. Nothing sticks like that village. I know what I saw. And I know those people weren't just villagers. Whatever they weren't meant to be found. And we were never meant to leave. My name's Corporal Wesley Kane. Infantry, 10th Mountain Division. I was 28 when this happened, deployed out in Kunar Province, Afghanistan, during my 2nd tour. This story isn't about firefights or IEDs. It's about something that happened during a freak monsoon out in the middle of nowhere, something I still can't explain. It was late March. Our platoon was running extended recon along a stretch of mountainous terrain known for Taliban movement. Intel said the area was cold, but higher wanted eyes anyway. We were 10 clicks out from FOB Organ E, 6 of us in a combat outpost that barely qualified as a structure, just 2 conjoined mud huts with sandbag walls and a busted generator. That worked when it wanted to. The rain started that afternoon. By 2200 it was biblical. Sheets of water, visibility at 0, radios crackling with static. SSG Ramirez ordered us to hold position, maintain night watch in shifts, and wait for the weather to break before exfil. I drew the midnight to ZO200 slot with Specialist Derricks, a quiet kid from Wyoming who never talked unless you asked him something direct. Our job was perimeter, keep watch for movement near the East Ridge. That ridge dropped into thick forest, too steep for vehicles, but we'd heard chatter of insurgents hiding caches out there. At 0100 we got a garbled transmission over our PRC 117. It wasn't from HQ, just a single voice. Requesting pickup. Grid 72 Alpha. Repeat. Need exfil. Immediate. It didn't match any unit call signs. Ramirez ordered us to ignore it. Probably enemy spoofing, he said. But the voice came again. Same words. Same tone. No panic. Just flat. Dead. Calm. Like someone reading off a script. After 20 minutes, HQ finally gave us permission to investigate. They said no friendlies were operating in that sector, but we were the closest team with wheels. Ramirez sent me, Derricks, and Staff Sergeant Bell down the ridge in an MRAP. We had GPS on a ruggedized tablet, but reception was shit thanks to the storm. Bell had to navigate by map and flashlight, shouting coordinates over the rattle of the
rain. We made it to the grid square after about 30 minutes.
The terrain flattened, but there was nothing out there. No compounds, no roads, just ankle-deep mud and 1,000 black trees. Then the tablet pinged. Movement detected. 40 meters dead ahead. A lone heat signature. We stopped. Bell ordered. Lights off. I flicked my nods down and scanned the tree line. That's when I saw him. A man, standing motionless, half hidden behind a tree. He wasn't carrying a weapon, no gear, just soaked fatigues, woodland pattern outdated by decades. Derricks whispered, "That uniform's older than my dad." Bell stepped out and shouted, "Identify yourself." The figure didn't react, just turned and started walking deeper into the trees, not fast, just determined. "He's baiting us," I said, but Bell was already moving. "Could be a POW, we follow." Against my better judgment, we followed. 50 meters in, we hit an old trail. The rain made everything slick, and we lost sight of the guy, but we kept moving. The forest swallowed our lights. After 10 minutes, we came into a clearing. That's when I froze. There were pits, shallow holes, dozens of them like graves, some half filled with muddy water. No shovels, no tracks, just empty holes in perfect rows. Derricks stopped.
Breathing. I heard him mutter, "I saw this before."
When I was a kid, back home, same layout, same trees. I didn't have time to ask what he meant, because Bell spotted the guy again, standing across the clearing, just watching us. No movement, no expression. Bell raised his M4 and shouted,
"Get on the ground!" The man didn't move. Then, without warning, he spoke. "You shouldn't be here." Bell took a step forward, gun still trained. "Are you American?" he asked. The man's mouth opened again, wider this time. too wide. His jaw cracked as if it unhinged. Then he blinked and vanished. I mean it. He just wasn't there anymore. No movement, no sound, just gone. We hauled as back to the MRAP, but it wouldn't start. Dead battery. No reason why. Brand new power cell that morning. Derrick's was panicking now. He kept saying he saw his uncle in that man's face. An uncle who died in Desert Storm. I didn't want
to hear it. I just wanted out. Bell finally got the generator to spark by hot wiring a comm battery, and we tore back up the ridge. When we got to the outpost, Ramirez took one look at us and ordered a full radio blackout. We weren't to mention what happened. No logs, no debrief, just file it as weather interference and move on. A week later, I checked with S2. There were no friendly units within 50 miles of that location. And the call sign used? It hadn't been active since 1991, belonged to a recon team that went missing during a black op near the Pakistani border. Status presumed KIA. No remains ever found. We didn't talk about it after that. Derrick's got transferred. Bell started drinking hard. I finished the tour, but sometimes I still wake up at 0100 on the dot, heart pounding, expecting to hear that voice again. Requesting pickup. Grid 72 Alpha. If you ever hear it, don't answer. Some things out there remember us. And they're still waiting to be found. Name's Turner. I was 29, active duty, E5 with the 101st when it happened. We were on a rotation at a joint training exercise in southern Italy, some NATO base near the coast. Every few weekends, if we weren't tasked, a few of us would grab civvies and head into town. It was a beach town, mostly tourist bars and overpriced gelato, but it had a pulse. We needed that after weeks of MREs and fake firefights. That particular weekend, most of the guys were wiped. Some had watch, others just didn't feel like going out. I was the only one in my squad still itching for a beer. I didn't feel like staying in the barracks, so I went solo. The town was alive. I hit a bar we'd been to before. Low ceilings, lots of noise, cheap liquor. I got a few drinks in, started chatting with a couple Americans sitting near me. Contractors, they said. One of them, Maddox, said he'd worked private security in Afghanistan. The other, Lenny, didn't say much. They were older, maybe mid-30s, both ex-military by the look of them. Maddox talked the most, loud, confident, friendly. We bar-hopped a bit. They seemed harmless enough. Eventually, Lenny bailed, and it was just Maddox and me. We ended up at a small dive near the edge of town. Maddox said they had cheap whiskey and a pool table. The place was almost empty. Dim red lighting, wood-panelled walls, smelled like bleach and old beer. I had a few more drinks. I'd pre-gamed a bit back in my barracks too, so by then I was buzzing hard. I excused myself to the restroom. When I got back, there was another round waiting. He pushed it toward me with a grin. Hydration, he said. That's the last thing I remember clearly. When I woke up, it was pitch black. Concrete floor beneath me. My head throbbed like it had been used for target practice. I scrambled up, feeling around for my phone. Nothing. No wallet. No gear. I found a wall, followed it until I hit a light switch. It was a boiler room. Small, musty. Just a water heater and some buckets. One door. I opened it, slowly. darkness again. A basement by the smell and the feel, thin carpet, furniture I could bump into. I moved cautiously, looking for stairs. That's when I heard someone behind me shift, like getting up from a couch. Then a voice. Turner? It was Maddox. I spun toward the sound, just a silhouette across the room. I said nothing. He stepped closer. Hey, calm down! You got too drunk at the bar, so I brought you back here. Where the hell is here? My place. Relax. Where's my stuff? My voice cracked. Upstairs. You were out cold. Figured I'd let you sleep it off. Why was I?
In a fucking boiler room. He paused. I didn't want you puking on the couch. I didn't buy it. Not with how my gut was twisting. I said, I'm leaving. Open the damn door. He took another step forward. No, Turner, you're
not going anywhere. That's when I knew this wasn't just weird, it was dangerous. I threatened him, loudly. He said something about having a knife and not wanting to use it. Claimed I was too drunk to walk, let alone drive. I told him I'd call a cab. He said, You're staying? I'll get you some water, then you can lay down. He walked past me. I didn't follow, I just listened. Heard him go up the stairs. Then click. A deadbolt. He locked me down there. That was my moment. I looked around. Nothing usable as a weapon. Just darkness and fear. I crept to the top of the stairs and waited. Pressed myself against the wall, just to the left of the door. 5 minutes later, I heard the lock again. The second the door cracked, I slammed into him. He dropped like a sack of bricks, and I had him in a choke before he could think. He sputtered, clawed at my arm. I growled.
Where's my phone and my wallet? Kitchen, he wheezed. Table, please, just trying to help.
Got a weapon? He nodded. Pocket, switchblade. I pulled it out, flipped it open, held it to his neck. You drug me, lock me in your damn house and tell me you're helping? He choked out something about not wanting me to get
hurt, about being misunderstood. I didn't care. I grabbed my stuff and got the hell out. Called my platoon sergeant from a payphone, told him I got jumped. Didn't mention the details, just that it was serious. He sent our medic and our squad leader to pick me up. I didn't go to the MPs. Off the books felt safer.
I went to the clinic on base the next day. They ran a tox screen, found Rohypnol in my system. I filed a report after that, quietly, told CID what I knew. They couldn't find Maddox or Lenny, no military ID, no contractor records under those.
Names? They just vanished, like they were never there. I don't go out alone anymore. Don't drink anything I didn't open myself.
I've been to combat zones and seen messed up things, but nothing made my blood run cold like waking up in a stranger's basement with no memory of how I got there. Whatever his plan was, I wasn't meant to walk out. But I did. And I'll never let myself get that close again.